it's really interesting seeing the difference. So Nigel likes doing that, but he does it in a very constructed way, and he thinks he's very charismatic. And it's sort of, actually, it was so up himself in the end, you realise. And that actually, that's what I quite like about Ed Davies. He is sort of, he's making it into a joke. And Nigel Farage thinks that he's this sort of, the interloper, the one that's coming in, and he thinks he's the alternative, protest vote. And actually, I think the Lib Dems should be more of that. I think the Lib Dems should be the protest
And there's
vote.
only so long Farage can do that. I mean, he's been doing it for 30 years.
And away from the TV debate last night, you've written your column today, Alice, about Ed Davey.
Well, the
and
Liberal
the
Democrat.
method in what appears to be his madness.
So what I like about the Lib Dems is they have just gone for it. And I think they know they're the joke. So they've gone down water slides. They've photobombed Rishi Sunak. They have, Ed Davey has fallen off just about everything. He's done a Jenga pile. And he actually looks like he's enjoying it. It's the only person who's enjoying, the last few weeks. And in a way, I kind of admire them for just embracing it. And I also think they've got a more serious message. So for this election, they've been much more sensible than the last few elections. They're only going to contest 90 seats, really, the ones that they think they can win off the Tories. They're going for the Tories so that they're not going to clash with Labour. And they also have a message which is care. And I think that's a really good one, because I think no one's doing care homes. No one's doing what's going to happen to the elderly. No one's doing people with disabled children. And Ed Davey is very well positioned to do that, because his mother died when he was very young. His father died when he was 5. His mother died when he was 15. He cared for his mother. His wife's got multiple sclerosis, and he's got a disabled son. So he's been a carer all his life. So to go on care, I think, is a really good idea and really important.
And does their policy stack up? The one that you mentioned in your column about free care at home?
Yes, I think it's a really good idea, actually, because what we're saying is trying to keep people out of hospital. And in the end, that will benefit. It's a long-term benefit to the NHS, but it will. And actually, I think it's incredibly helpful for people. And it sounds like a lot of money, but they're financing it through all the sort of non-dom, classic kind of,
well, hopefully
tax.
Labour will nick it.
Well, that's what you want. And that's what you want from them. And I do want them to be the third party again, actually, because I think they are quite beneficial when they're there and they've got enough of a presence. They do swing stuff. And they've got, the other thing they're doing is sewage. I think that's quite an important issue to do. And they keep bringing that up. And I think they'll do really well on that.
Especially in the southwest, where Heartland, they'll do this big thing down there, isn't it?
I was really struck last week when I was off, and I was sort of consuming the election more like a normal person, going about my business and maybe catching up on the news at the end of the day. The thing that really struck me was there was a sort of sense of Rishi Sunak throwing out just anything he could think of, the National Service. And this argument that he used last night that, people are talking about it. I said, well, if you if you shaved your head, people would talk about it. It's not necessarily a policy. Anyway, and then Labour were bogged down in Diane Abbott. And then Ed Davey was punching through. He was clearly getting more coverage as a result of the silly stunts. He looked like he was enjoying himself. And actually, it's interesting. We've got an interview coming out later this week with Dominic Sandbrook, historian, Times columnist, and we were talking about how this election compares to previous ones and how, the 60s you had Harold Wilson, they embraced telly and then, the internet and all that. And we've sort of reached a point now where everyone's so cynical. Everyone knows what they're doing. Yeah. The Ed Davey sort of deconstructing the entire notion of a general election campaign. That instead of the going and meeting a carefully selected group of people and then,
he just falls off a paddleboard.
He's just mucking about. He's just like saying, all you want is a silly picture of me, and I'm going to tell you I threw myself in the water. Yeah, and that's fine, and we don't mind.
And he's got Alice writing a column about him as a result. So it's that's kind of working, isn't it?
But also, I think with Nigel Farage, it's really interesting seeing the difference. So Nigel likes doing that, but he does it in a very constructed way, and he thinks he's very charismatic. And it's sort of, actually, it was so up himself in the end, you realise. And that actually, that's what I quite like about Ed Davies. He is sort of, he's making it into a joke. And Nigel Farage thinks that he's this sort of, the interloper, the one that's coming in, and he thinks he's the alternative, protest vote. And actually, I think the Lib Dems should be more of that. I think the Lib Dems should be the protest
And there's
vote.
only so long Farage can do that. I mean, he's been doing it for 30 years. So, I think Danny Finkelstein made the point that he's actually the continuity candidate in a sense.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, he's kind of more chaos and just can't we, maybe there's something to be said for boring grown-ups for a while.
That sort of, clearly it appeals to a section of the electorate, the sort of what we need is a revolution. We need to turn everything on over its head.
Yeah, but we very rarely ever need a revolution.
Yeah,
they don't end well.
Quite enough revolutions in the last.
They rarely end well.
Also, when you heard Ed Davey talking about his background, his childhood, it's just so much more difficult than either Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak or Nigel
right.
Farage. I mean,
Yeah.
he was actually almost crying when he talks about the fact that within his disabled child, when he dies, he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. And that was unbelievably moving.
Well, we're so conditioned to thinking about difficulty in childhood related to social class, and it's not always. I mean, it is, but it's also related.
Well, he was
to,
quite a working class family, but he had this amazing family when everything went wrong, didn't it? I mean,
but that would be hard even if you were well off. That would be pretty tough background. I think
in fact, it's worth, if you are interested, it's worth listening back. Was it end of last year you had Ed Davey on?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really extraordinary. I've never seen a childhood that went more wrong.
Alice and Rachel's podcast, What I Wish I'd Known, which you can find.
Incidentally, I thought the national service thing was pretty contemptible. Just to get a headline in the Mail on Sunday, it's because there's a germ of a good idea there actually, and but just to do that and then to say that people could be a firefighter once a month is pretty condescending towards people who've trained to do that job.
But also, if you'd taken the military bit out of it, because actually the idea that you're going to compel 18-year-olds.
Yeah, it's a good idea to recruit, to have another 30,000
people around the country, getting to know other people.
Yeah.
And giving something back in a sense of society.
Yeah, or picking up litter, whatever.
Basically, the National Citizen Service.
Yes.
Yeah, which is what David Cameron did, and then Rishi Sunak cut back on. So he's already cut back on this, and then he re-announces it. That's what I think. I think he is by far the most cynical at the moment. Just pushing out
I thought it was
ideas.
really pretty shameful. Yeah, pretty shameful.
And it was notable that when it was brought up in the TV debate last night, people laughed. And if people are laughing, then you know. Unless you're in the stand-up business, it's probably.
And Matthew Parris says this morning, there's actually a case for national service for the over 60s rather than for the 18.
I particularly enjoyed the suggestion that they could all be issued with those long-handled grabbers that don't need to bend over.
That might be Robert soon, because I think
I do that on
he may
Sunday.
be coming up to 60.
I am 60 in 2 months' time.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Yes, it's incredible, isn't it?
We're going to be invited to the party as well, I think. We're hoping.
Yeah, there is some.
When is it?
Correct. And my birthday's August the 10th. Oh. You'll be gone.
I will be gone by then.
I thought you were staying till...
No, but we don't get bogged out of that now. End of July. End of July.
Oh.
And then I'll be tending the garden over the summer.
Oh, right, that. Yeah.
Right, anyway, let's talk about the countryside. There's a great piece in the Times today from Abby Kay, the Deputy Editor of Farmers Weekly, looking at young farmers, but that's young with a capital Y and F. So young farmers groups, talking about them being the new toxic rugby lads. Young men treating women like toys. Sexual assault was commonplace. Really diving into a part of society we just don't talk about normally, Alice. But I have, although I wasn't a young farmer myself, lots of members of my family were and are. I think my parents might have even met the young farmers. So I'm very much aware of them as a thing. But a fascinating insight to a part of society we don't ever talk
and
about.
actually what's really important for the young farmers is they do need some social life. So it's incredibly important for them to get together and have a good time. What Abby Kay has done, and she's a really good journalist, she has gone there, she's looked at it, and she's realised that it's become very, very toxic. It probably always was, quite toxic. But now, I mean, the amount of alcohol that's being consumed and the way the men are treating the women, and there are some of the slogans on the T-shirt, I'm not even going to say, they're just so wrong and really abusive to women, and they're almost condoning rape. So she's been right to call it out. I think what's difficult for her is she works for Farmers Weekly. She's very pro-farmers. So I think she probably had to think very hard before she did this, because she'll get a lot of flack for it from the farming community.
Yeah. Really brave thing for her to do. I mean, brave because, like you say, you're perceived to be going against your tribe, your social group. Although, obviously, she's not doing that. She's doing something which needs to be done. And in the long run, it should be of benefit to them. They probably don't see it that way at the moment.
And what you hope is in the long run, more women will join farming, that actually it'll be cleared up and they will think, this is somewhere I can go. I can be a shepherdess. I can, go and run a farm. I can, because it's such a male-dominated industry. I mean, you and I know, but in the West Country, it's a lot more men down there, isn't it? And it's very tribal.
But it's sort of, in a way, I think the Young Farmers Clubs, which is, I don't know, what's the age you can join them? Is it sort of 13, 14? So some of them are underage, and then it sort of goes to the mid-20s. And for a lot of them, it is essentially the alternative to university, or the precursor to going to university. And it's, group activities, but drink plays a massive part in that. And then it all just and in many ways, it's the first interactions. And if the club has a culture of misogyny and heavy drinking,
You're not drunk when you put your T-shirt on to go out, though, are you? And your T-shirt is saying. I mean, I saw some of them in the paper there. I thought there's sort of suggestive ones that you might see being sold at the seaside, but then they're a bit more than that. That, like you say, through condoning rape.
Yeah.
There is a wider problem in society at the moment. It's just, this is focusing on young farmers, and I'm sure maybe that's more extreme because the drink or isolation or whatever. But there is a wider problem, which I know from my daughter, who is 25. Young men we think that they've got serious issues with misogyny and sexism, which is kind of really back with a vengeance. You think these things, you make the mistake of thinking these things are all improving in a linear fashion, and they're not.
Well, it's partly because I dare say,
gone wrong
lots
again.
of newspaper features are all about avocado eating, esteemies. Why aren't young people drinking anymore? And it's like the idea is they're all sort of sitting at home.
Yeah, but they haven't seen all those sports clubs at unis.
Exactly.
I mean, the sports
Yeah.
clubs at universities are very like the young farmers, I think,
Yes.
some of them, that they have
Yeah,
these initiation
precisely.
rites,
Yeah.
that they all behave really badly, they're all getting really drunk, and it's, it is
but
a lot
there's
of drinking still
yeah.
there. So to say that no one, young drinks anymore, that's not true either, is
No,
it?
Yeah.
but there is there's a shift in attitude, and it's not just young male farmers. It's young men everywhere have got. They think they can talk to women and behave towards women in a way that would appall a generation older than my generation, and ones in between.
Well, it's well worth having a read of it with your subscription. Go to thetimes.co.uk. I'll pick up a copy of the paper today. Abby Kay's piece. She's deputy editor of Farmers Weekly, and it's alarming but genuinely well worth your time to read.